So let's think about some strategic considerations, thinking about three specific areas of interest, of what I think are of interest. Firstly, business alignment. And I want to keep this in tune with your organization is the important thing. What you do is the important thing. We're aligning this technology, this revolutionary technology, this force that was being described earlier in the quotes. We're aligning this with what you do, aligning with your business. Data foundations. And that really speaks to my interest. I'm very interested in the data side of this journey, but also responsible and ethical AI. And I think that any training that you might go on, I would hope that many, if not all, presentations you see on AI would include something of this responsible and ethical AI. So I'll go through these 3 points over the next 3 slides. Alan Turing, actually instrumental in the earlier days of AI, says we can see a short distance ahead. We can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty there that needs to be done. And while in many ways we are standing on the shoulders of giants when using some of the tools that you have access to, there is a long way to go before anything like competence, certainly not mastery of those tools, but even being competent with those tools, getting them to align with us properly, is a significant journey. It doesn't just happen, like I said, by getting a ChatGPT license. So let's just think about these. Alan Turing, referring to Alan Turing and saying important in the early days. In 1950, Alan Turing wrote a paper in the Philosophy and Psychology Journal. Computer Weekly wasn't an option then. And he posed the question, can machines think? And a lot of that idea is taken forward into machine learning, into, let's say, various cognitive services that different tools would have. There was the IBM Deep Blue, the chess playing computer. There was Eliza, the online psychotherapist. There are various sort of expressions of machine learning and machines having cognition. And then more recently, generative components and agents, AI agents, agentic AI, and tools to help us get there. So yeah, a long way ahead for us, even though we do have many of the tools that we could in theory just switch on. So let's have a think about business alignment first, then we'll go through the others. It's your business, it's your strategy. Now, we've got to think of strategy as a means of getting to our vision, and that's front and center. Have a vision, have an idea of what you're wanting to do. Have a big picture of what you want to do, but also have a more proximate idea of objectives. And we're aligning these tools, this force, with our business objectives. So we're thinking about ideas like growth and revenue goals that we might have, societal goals that we might want to fulfill, cost efficiency, increasing productivity, customer experience, risk reduction, risk comprehension as well, being able to be more innovative in what we do. So we're aligning the strategic objectives or aligning the tools to our strategic objectives. When I teach, just a bit of an aside, when I teach courses in especially data analytics, but other courses, this is relevant for other areas of work as well. So if I was teaching a course in Power BI, I would say to anyone on that course, the most important skill that you need to be able to work with Power BI or whatever else the tool is. But Power BI stands out in my mind particularly. The most important skill that you have is to kind of know yourself, know where you work, know what you use, know the data, know the meaning of it. The tools are actually very easy to learn, but without this idea of your objectives, the tools are empty. They're not really going to help. They can run, you can hear them, you can see them, but they're not really going to enable you if you don't initially have a clear idea of what you're wanting to achieve. And I don't know if this image resonates with you, but I feel that this is a way of thinking. I must use AI somewhere. There's got to be a use for it. Let me think, okay, what could I possibly dream up that AI could do? And there might be something interesting about that in terms of experimenting, but it's really about us having a clear definition of our problem, a clear definition of what can be helped. So not the way I've expressed this is not tech first thinking, but your situation first, the gap that you have between where you are now and where you want to be, and how that could be filled, how that could be enabled, how your skill set could be augmented with AI. Executive sponsor and ownership. And this is a sort of widely seen as a reason why AI implementation fails or maybe doesn't quite live up to what we'd imagine, because no one really owns it. And that's something we've got to address. Think of sponsorship. Now, traditionally, the sponsor is the person who's paying for it, but some kind of acknowledgement of accountability within your organization of who's paying for it, who's accountable for it. And I don't think that means there's an IT department, they are accountable for all of this. The IT department, well, IT is a service. IT is a service designed to help you create value, you get to your outcome. It's not necessarily accountable for this, but that's something that we have to have fairly early on. We need to have that sort of idea clarified. Think of prioritization of what we should be looking at. So is it financial benefit? Is it risk? Is it customer experience? Is it operational efficiency? Is it risk mitigation? What's our priority in this? And then think about the feasibility of what we're trying to do. Do we have the data for it? Is there a process in place? I think it'd be, well, I know it would be a huge mistake to somehow expect AI solutions to invent a process that we didn't have. Have the process, understand the process, automate it, build on it with AI tools, but have the process. That's a very human understanding that we have. So build it on our processes and look at the maturity of our processes. Of course, we're thinking of return on investment at this business alignment stage as well, and thinking of metrics that might indicate success or otherwise. And to capture that, my point here on the slide is AI value must be measurable, not aspirational. Now, realized earlier, looking at that point, maybe I've been a bit harsh on aspiration. Aspiration is important. Aspiration can inspire and lead us to an understanding of vision and give us a motive to experiment, a motive to invent and be better. So maybe I've been a bit harsh saying not aspirational, but I do want to be able to measure the value of AI. So what time is saved? What do we have a more significant throughput of sales? customer churn, so customers leaving us, is that the flow of customers leaving or the flow of staff leaving, has that flow been stemmed by our understanding that we can get from AI tools? Think of quality and accuracy measurements as well. So it's not just switched on and left and hope for the best, but that we actually have metrics, clearly defined metrics, so we can, in fact, measure it. Make sure that we're thinking about our workflows and how tools that we use can fit with those workflows. And as I've been emphasizing already, it's your organization that's the important part of this, not the technology. The technology supports you because you're the important part here. You're the important component. So think about your workflows and how AI can integrate with these, how it can help. A question that would come up, and actually will come up again later, is thinking of building your solutions, buying your solutions, partnering on your solutions. So, you know, there's vendors of AI solutions in abundance, but is that what you need? Is that tying you into a vendor? Do you have the capability to build solutions yourself? Do you think it might be better to partner with organizations? So that's actually a comment that comes up again when we look at technology. So with business alignment, then first of all, we're thinking about ourselves and thinking about what we do and how AI can help us. We're understanding our own problem, our own situation, and building out from there. And taking that as a first step, I think, is important. A quote from Fei-Fei Li, who's a very important speaker on AI and a driving force behind many ideas. Strategy in the AI era is about empowering people with intelligent tools. That resonates with me. I just think people are the important part of this. So it's empowering people with these intelligent tools. Okay. Let's have a look at one of the other strategic considerations, and it's data foundations. And the comment there in the sandwich board, artificial intelligence is meaningless without data. Now, you might be able to tell from that picture that I used AI to generate it. I don't think there's anything too overwhelming that gives it away, but that was the third attempt at it because it misspelt intelligence on the first two attempts. So yeah, without data, artificial intelligence is meaningless. So we'll take that forward. So think of a few ideas here. Data quality, and encapsulated in that, the accuracy of data, the completeness of data, the consistency of data. If I go back to the Alan Turing idea of can machines think? Well, can any of us think? Maybe that's the question. But in thinking, we are drawing upon our data. We're drawing upon not just individual data points, but information that we've built up and knowledge that we've been able to establish by connecting bits of information, and wisdom that we're able to draw upon because of experience, and that helps us make decisions, the sort of actionable insight that we establish constantly while moving around the world. Can machines think? Well, we can give them data. We can turn it into information, and we can build knowledge by combining bits of information. And maybe there comes a point where wisdom could be achieved as well. And the imitation game of not knowing if that's a machine responding or a person responding could be realized. I recently was listening to a podcast on admittedly a podcast about AI, but it took me a long time to realize, genuinely, it took me a long time to realize that it was two machine voices talking to each other. Can that machine think? Well, maybe thinking's a bit extravagant, but certainly it can imitate, which is a start. But if we're giving inaccurate, partially complete, inconsistent data, we can't expect it to do much good for us. And you've got the idea of hallucinations, where an AI solution has missing information and fills in the gaps itself, draws the wrong conclusions. It might be incorrect predictions that we're getting. Because it's a machine that's telling us this, do we accept it? And that's another sort of more psychological consideration. If the machine says it is so, is it so? Be bold, be brave enough to question it. Say that's not true. But hallucinations, incorrect predictions, poor customer outcomes, the the awkwardness sometimes of automated tools could be a factor there. And I think generally a lack of trust or loss of trust, a diminishing in trust when we start to see those quirks in solutions. I have to say, once I realized I was listening to two machines talking to each other, I did start to question almost everything they said. So yeah, there is that sort of creeping loss of trust. So we're thinking as organizations of data completeness, basically data engineering is a key skill set that you want to see in your organization. Good data engineering that's tied into the requirement, that's not one size fits all and expecting here's the source of data, let's just use that, but actually to really think carefully about what we're using. We're thinking about the availability of data and how accessible it is as well. So what sort of legacy systems are we working with? Cloud tools, cloud applications. So Azure SQL, for example, is a cloud application, Synapse Analytics. What sort of cloud tools are we using and storage that we have? The departmental silo, where the sort of hidden boxes of data stored under the stairs somewhere. How can that be? How can that be relevant? And how can we smash silos in the first place to try and make data a bit more democratic? Think of the PDFs and emails and mountains of documents that we have in shared drives. How do we start to corral that and bring that into our environment and make it work for us? So yeah, getting the right data. Again, ownership. If we're talking about ownership of AI solutions, we've got to think about ownership of data, governance of data, who's actually responsible for it. Who does the buck stop with? So having strong governance there, even though it's maybe not on the slide, that's a useful follow-on idea. On the slide, integration and interoperability. So how do our current systems interoperate and work with data? So your CRM systems, your ERP system, HR system, how do they sort of interoperate? Are they disconnected? Well, how does that relate to the data foundations that we'd be expecting from our AI solutions? The architectures that we look at, cloud architecture, on-premises architecture, hybrid architectures, the significance of environments like data lakehouse, vector databases, retrieval augmentation, real-time processing, batch data pipelines, compute resources, all those sort of structures for our data to reside in. I'm not intending this to be a sort of technical webinar. It's more about the sort of strategic ideas, but you get into some weeds pretty quickly, the detail pretty quickly as you look into this. We'll think as well of the life cycle of data. When do we get it? What do we do to enrich it? How do we maintain it? How do we get rid of it? Think of its purpose and that overall life cycle and policies around that. And of course, with data, we're thinking of security, privacy, regulation, compliance. There's certainly plenty of that shouldn't say imposing upon us, but guiding us and supporting us. Regulations at a national level, international regulations that have significance as well. So European Union regulations around AI have been almost pioneering, and while we're not in the European Union here, we'd have a lot to learn from that kind of regulation, compliance ideas. Responsible and ethical AI, sort of the third part of those strategic considerations. AI, or ethical AI and responsible AI, they're put together often with responsible and ethical AI. They're not the same thing. Ethical AI, really ethical anything, is largely about doing the right thing. So ethical AI concentrates on the moral dimensions of AI. What's considered right or wrong? So very, quite big questions. What's considered right or wrong? Whereas responsible AI probably has a more tangible framework to it. I found I'm going to say Ernst & Young framework on responsible AI, but you probably know that as EY, responsible framework or framework for responsible AI, and I'm pretty much going to quote from that in the next slide because there's a more tangible structure to it. I thought a quote that went quite well with this is, I'm increasingly inclined to think that there should be some regulatory oversight, maybe at the national level, maybe at the national and international level, just to make sure that we don't do something very foolish. And that's from the great mind of Elon Musk, albeit in 2014. But just interesting that that idea, just get the regulatory oversight in case we want to have this established, and that's a strategic consideration before we launch ourselves into using AI. So thinking about regulation, just to try to resist the doing something very foolish part of it. With principles of responsible AI. So this is obviously important at this stage. So I want to think of these ideas. So we're looking at accountability. I mentioned early on, have someone own this, have someone take ownership of this. So looking at a sponsor, accountability, so some genuine ownership of this. It's not just a sort of wildfire that's invading our organization and illuminating some and destroying others. It's something that has consistency and ownership. So unambiguous ownership, and that doesn't necessarily mean yes, we have an IT department, we have ownership of AI. It's not at all the same thing. Data protection. You have to do this. It's not an AI regulation that you have to protect your data. There's national and international regulations around data protection. We want reliability in our systems. AI systems aligned with expectation in terms of precision, consistency, doing what they're supposed to do, doing that consistently as well. Security of AI systems. Think of an acronym that's often used with security is CIA, not what we think of initially, but confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So protecting those factors. Transparency, see how it works kind of thing. So have an idea of, I suppose, the authenticity of the tool that we're working with. Explainability. I think that could be a challenge. I can see in an Excel formula that this and this and this equals this. It's explainable. With AI solutions, we're using language models. We're using colossal amounts of storage and compute resource to come up with a decision, to come up with a value, to come up with a picture or some kind of insight. How explainable is that? It's harder to see that, but that's a pillar of responsible AI, this idea of it being explainable. Fairness. Is it the loan is the loan approved for someone and not approved for someone else based on what would be in human terms considered an unfair bias? So think about where bias exists and think about societal impact of AI. Compliance, whether we like it or not, and we probably ought to like it, complying with relevant laws, relevant standards, professional standards, um, the regulations, and sustainability as well. So think about the physical environments that we're working with. It's data centers that are used here use power. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They use power. They have a sort of environmental footprint, but think about social impact, economic impact, general planetary well-being in that as well. And these are actually not my ideas. These come from the EY principles of responsible AI, and this was a headline that I actually took these bullet points from a survey: companies advancing responsible AI governance linked to better business outcomes. So, following some kind of standards in responsible AI is not to your detriment.